Hello everyone, Bashrob here. In this video, I'll teach you how to take on bears and moose from up close, also known as dancing. You may ask, why do this? There are safer ways to kill bears and moose after all. But I think it's still very useful to know how to dance in case you run into a bear or a moose by accident. It's also a quite versatile strategy and can be used to kill bears and moose regardless of where they spawn. And personally, I just think it's a really fun way to kill them. And if you watched the previous video about struggles, you probably already know that bear maulings and moose stomps are quite predictable and usually not lethal. First, let's go over what you should not do when dancing bears and moose. The most important thing for dancing is mobility. You probably shouldn't be attempting to dance if your movement speed is impacted in any way, as it's highly likely you'll end up getting mauled. It is possible to dance even with reduced movement speed, but it does make things a lot harder. I recommend not attempting that until you really know what you're doing. I might cover the specifics of movement speeds in a future video, but what you need to know right now is that you shouldn't be over-encumbered, and you should also not dance in windy weather or on slopes. You also want to make sure you can sprint, at least in short dashes, so sprains, exhaustion or very high sprint penalty are not acceptable either. Flat, open areas with no wind work the best, though in areas with obstacles such as trees, you can still dance by turning those obstacles to your advantage. The hardest part of dancing is dodging the first time the animal charges you, as it's running very fast and straight at you. This is the only part of the dance where you may need to sprint. If you run into a bear or a moose by accident and are exhausted, you could drink a coffee or an energy drink or use a stim. Dodging the charge is simple in theory. You just turn left or right and sprint. But it might be harder than that if you're not used to doing it, as it requires the right angle and timing. You want to turn 90 degrees or slightly less in either direction and sprint away. With an angle over 90, you might not avoid the struggle, as it's not too different from simply running away, and the bear will just catch up with you eventually. Timing is also important for the same reason. If you try running away too early, the bear will have enough time to correct its path and still maul you. The point is to exploit the bear's poor ability to turn around, which slows it down to the point you can just walk around it. Very sharp angles actually work better for this reason, so if you're struggling to get either the timing or the angle right, you could just sprint towards the bear and dodge it at the very last moment. It might seem scary, but getting the right timing and angle might actually be easier that way. Once you survive the initial charge, the hardest part is over. Sprinting is not required after this part, and you can simply walk in a circle until you take the animal down. The most important thing here is to not get too close and take your time. Bears are significantly easier to dance compared to moose, as they seem to turn around slower, so maneuvering around them is quite forgiving. You could even walk them to safety, where they leave you alone, in case you don't really want to fight them or don't have a weapon. Moose, however, are quite a bit faster and dancing them is a lot trickier. It's best to not dance the moose at all if you feel like the wind is affecting your movement speed even a little bit, as it's a lot less forgiving than the bear. It turns around much faster. Typically, dancing in a circle pattern might not allow you to shoot, You can see that you can dance without getting stomped as long as you keep walking, but once you draw the bow and you slow down, you are likely to get stomped. So what works better for the moose is dancing it in an oval pattern instead, and try to draw your bow while it's still running away from you, which should give you plenty of time to land your hit and still dodge the coming charge. Once you get used to the timing, it won't be too difficult to pull it off consistently. You can see me here dancing 10 moves in a row. I always run from the first charge in a sharp angle. Running left instead of right is just my preference, do whichever feels more natural for you. Of course, this is a perfect scenario for moose dancing. The area is open and there is no wind. So it's still good to prepare for the worst and carry bandages and painkillers and maybe take off clothing you can't afford to lose. That's all for now, thank you for watching.